All right, thank you, Todd. So I'm excited to join all of you tonight. And as Todd stated, one of the things that we as a design team really benefit from is all of the work that you as a community did. And so as we dive into the natural resource topic and as we dive into future topics, one of the things that you're going to start to hear is us trying to state back to you what we heard, right? A summary of kind of the information that was provided to us as we started our process and we started in to provide some design work to the community. And so one of those questions that was asked in the focus group is, what are the major concerns? And what you're seeing here listed on the screens are concerns that are pretty universal across Lake Country. And so I had the benefit of working for UW Extension for about 10 years, working on many different lake management plans all across northern Wisconsin. And a lot of the challenges that you see here are common to lake communities, right? Concerns about development along the shoreline, concerns about overuse of the lakes, the lack of amenities. How do we attract people to our community? So Miles, let's go ahead and jump to the next slide, which I think is equally important, is starting to recognize some of the, you skipped over one on me. Biggest opportunities, here we go. As we start to look to the future, what are the biggest opportunities for the natural environment in Three Lakes? Increasing public access to lakes and shorelines. How do we bring in the community, both visitors and residents, and how do we educate them about the health of our lake systems, about how to maintain and be good stewards of that moving forward? And also, how do we guide growth and development to protect the environment and community character? So what you're going to see in the following slides is a series of ideas that we've started to pull together. But the thing that really sticks out to me is as we were doing some of our research, one of the historic images that popped up was a flyer from 1936, about seeing the North Woods in the autumn, right? And this idea that you could hop on a train in Chicago and make your way north to see Lake Country in the fall, I think is very similar to what we see today. Is it's the same basic idea of what attracts people here first. There's so many different stories of people that didn't start off as residents in Lake Country, but they started as visitors, and then they eventually became more attached to this place and more attached to the people in the community. And so what we came up with here in terms of big ideas is that we wanted to go and reiterate some of the things we heard from you. So what you're going to see here in a minute is that we started by looking at what should this relationship between the community and the lakes look like. So lakeshore restoration, access, tiered visitor experiences, these are important things. But then we also started looking for opportunities for expanding and enhancing on these opportunities. So Cy Williams Park and City Beach became certainly opportunities within all of this. And finally, also developing some trails. Miles, if you can go to the next slide for me. But one of the keys that came through all of these conversations as we dig into this topic is that there's always been this balance in the North Woods between showmanship and stewardship. People come to the lakes because it's an enjoyment, they're seeking recreation, they're seeking enjoyment, they're seeking the benefits of having these beautiful lakes and the opportunities that presents while they're there. And so as we look on the right and we stay focused on stewardship, it's the beauty of these lakes. It's the health of these lakes that has continued to attract people to this community and will continue to attract people into the future. But there's always been this element of showmanship mixed into this. And so let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. And what you're going to see in the following three slides is that we've gone in and we've tried to capture what we believe to be the core components of how the community relates or can relate to the lakes in the future. And so you're going to see that we've kind of built this up as a series of steps. And one of those steps that we believe is foundational to all of this is that, stewardship really begins at home, right? And it's one of those things as Lake Country has developed, as we've seen development pressure around the lakes, one of the most important things we can do is work together as citizens, as residents, to do whatever is possible in our own backyards to maintain and protect the shoreline. And so what you see on here is a series of things that are both stewardship related. So things like going in and adding bioswales or improving vegetation along the shoreline, or as one of the programs, one of your videos pointed out to us, the fish sticks program that the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources recommends for adding structure along the shoreline, right? These are all things that can be done, but they have to be mixed in with these elements of showmanship. So things like providing outdoor gathering spaces for your family, creating swimmable areas off of your dock. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide, please. As we continue out into the community and move beyond the private property, there's also things that the community needs to be aware of. As we started studying this, certainly access is always an issue, and this is a hotly debated topic with every lake community I've ever worked with. There's this idea that and I'm right there with you as a recreationist, is that you don't really want all that many more people to find out about your best kept secret. But there's the other component of this, which is that that's also part of the community. It's part of the identity. It's how you attract people. It's how partially how you support your economy. And so one of the things we want to make sure we're doing is that whenever possible, wherever we provide public access to the water, so our boat ramps, that we're also going ahead and developing these as, some place that is welcoming, that brings in some of those showmanship elements, that provides both areas for staging and loading, but also shelters and a sense of gateway to welcome people to the chain of lakes. As we move over into the next category, we call it welcome. And these are these small opportunities, the right-of-ways that exist, the small bits of public land or public right-of-way where you can actually provide opportunities for visitors and people who don't have private land access to the lakes. Where do they go and get their selfie along the lake? How do we provide for kind of these very minimal contact experiences that are really important for visitors? All right, next slide, please. And as you see, we start progressing up to more complex approaches to how the community can support this. And so we talk about gathering and creating gathering spots where people are attracted to come and create experiences, where you're actually enhancing and adding recreational amenities around the lakes is critically important. And we're going to talk about a few of these here in just a minute. But it's things like going in and adding the kind of shelters and fire pits and trailheads, but also making sure that there are public docks available so that people can meet up with their friends that are actually coming by boat to these locations and have these kind of public park experiences. And then the last component of this is where we shift over to learn. And one of the things that we heard from you as a community is it's critically important to help educate both visitors and residents about the health of the health of the watershed, health of the lakes. But in addition to that, you have to really understand the lake country landscape in order to do that. And so we're going to talk about some experiences where we can add some learning components into this as well. We can go to the next slide. And so one of those places we're going to start is here in Cy Williams Park. And again, there's a lot of detail that we can discuss and it'll be part of the report later on. But for tonight, I want to go ahead and recognize that we see both, a professional baseball player and architect as an inspiration within this park. And you'll see a few elements that we hope kind of tie back to the Cy Williams memory in the redesign of this park space. So let's go ahead and jump into the next slide and kind of walk through some of these. So within this model, what you're actually seeing here is all of these different components of how the community interfaces with the lakes. And so we begin with, how do we really enhance that access point? So how can City Beach become an amenity that is really the centerpiece of downtown Three Lakes in terms of the relationship between visitors and the community and the lakefront, right? But we also have to add other amenities and welcome people in. We have to create opportunities for people to gather and also for places for people to learn. And so let's go ahead and jump through the next slides. So on the left-hand side of this screen, what you're going to see is the learning component. And what this is it's an interactive water feature that is intended to represent the entire chain of lakes in miniature. It's intended to be a place that, children can come and splash while their grandparents are shopping at the farmer's market. But it's intended as an interactive feature that can be supported with interpretive signage. On the right-hand side of this, what you're actually seeing here is that you're seeing a space that can serve, well, you also see the volleyball courts in the bottom of this, which was a request we heard from the high school students that provided feedback. But we also jump in and we see that the parking lot itself can actually serve as an event space. And so you see with the existing gazebo in the background there, that space can come in. Let's go ahead and jump to the next. And then the other major feature here comes down to this access. And so we were inspired by some historic photography in terms of, one of the local area camps really had extended out this swimming pier out into the lake. We see opportunities for both a swimming pier, a beach, and then also a fishing pier within the City Beach area. So next slide, please. Going beyond Cy Williams Park, though, we also started talking about trails and the potential impact regionally of trails. And as we studied this, it took us a few days to actually catch on to this because this wasn't something that we heard repeatedly. But one of the things that jumped out at us is that as we were looking at kind of a regional trail network, we sat down and mapped out your amenities, looking for these natural areas that exist across this region and what we could actually start to connect up with local trail network. One of the areas that jumped out in a big way for us is the absolute, massive amenity of having Thunder Lake State Wildlife Area located very close to downtown Three Lakes. One of the things that we also discovered as we dug into this is that the master plan for that property has not been updated since 1980. And so we've got some suggestions on that in following slides. In addition to the regional trail network, we also went and had conversations about what we can do in the downtown. And so what you're seeing here within the downtown is the opportunity for adding bike rentals, the opportunity for adding or connecting into existing city parks, but also a pretty significant emphasis on access to Maple Lake. And one of the things you're going to see here is that there are four blue arrows that kind of direct from Superior Street down to Maple Lake. And what those represent is they actually represent public right-of-way that's in the original town plat for those spaces. And one of the team members pointed this out to us and said, there are a lot of lake communities I've worked in the past that would have dreamed to have these kind of natural pedestrian connections that exist between their major roadway and their lakefront. These could be developed. It's not necessarily that we have to develop all of them or it has to happen tomorrow, but long term, this could really be turned into one of those really unique Three Lakes experiences where you could actually come in and make use of these public right-of-ways to enhance the pedestrian connections that exist within that area. Next slide. Jumping back out a little bit, we talk about, how do we kind of welcome people, and specifically visitors and those looking, maybe coming to Three Lakes for the first time. And so what you're actually seeing here is Rice Lake. Rice Lake is a protected lake within the Thunder Lake State Wildlife Area. And Rice Lake, actually, as we looked at it and had conversations with local birders within the community, one of the things they told us is that Rice Lake is an amazing resource that is very difficult to get to water's edge from the current infrastructure that's available there. This slide here is actually suggesting that that's exactly what we would like to see within this area is an expansion of amenities that allow visitors to come out and experience Rice Lake, that allow people to get out to water's edge, to learn about the wildlife, that call this state wildlife area home, to create this as one of these, important welcoming stations within your community. Next slide. And the other opportunities are to gather. We went and mapped and we started to see that when it comes to birding, Three Lakes is a bird city or part of the Bird City, Wisconsin program. We certainly have heard that there are a number of birders, but these opportunities to gather at these natural areas that really support birding. As you go out to about a 20-mile radius from Three Lakes, there are amazing resources here. This could really become something the community could market and attract a lot of visitors for a very different amenity than what your traditional lake users are looking for. Next slide. And finally, we come to the last slide in the natural environment team. And this goes back to, again, Thunder Lake, we recognized as this amazing opportunity, both in that you have a Northwoods Land Trust property that's on Thunder Lake, but you also have the state wildlife area, opportunities to work with DNR long-term to plan and develop environmental education resources, to create birding opportunities. What we're showing here is the potential for a platform that can get you up above some of the marshy lands to bring up onto one of these small rises within the landscape, bring you up a structure so that you're not necessarily right at water's edge, but you would definitely get an amazing view of all the wildlife and the birds that are coming and visiting your community. And we believe that that would be a major attractor for people coming to Three Lakes.